Now we come to driver of the day in championship standings. Driver of the day, the popular vote was for Alonso. Obviously, he did a fantastic job in holding up Hamilton. The team obviously knew that there was going to be some threat from Hamilton because he was so much faster than everybody else on track. He wasn't dealing with any damage, and obviously he's got a pretty good car. So he ended up sort of going up through the grid, and Alonso was there to kind of hold him back a little bit and to try and stem the tide so that Ocon could continue his fight for Vettel and do what he can to hold on to the win. So Alonso for being the team player there. I think Ocon deserves his due, though. I'm gonna say Ocon for driver of the day. He didn't really put a foot wrong. Handled the pressure absolutely brilliantly. He handled Vettel, a 4-time world champion, perfectly. He managed his tyres really well. Handled his own pit stop phase very nicely with both in lap and out lap. And sometimes we see some drivers get these opportunities and they never quite convert them. But Esteban, he looked really confident out there, and we saw a French driver for a French team with a French engine win a race for the first time since, I'm guessing, probably Prost for Renault in like the 80s or something. Got to be the last time that happened. I don't know exactly. Somebody can tell us in the comments. But I think Ocon deserves his due here. I've said before that I do rate him as a driver. I like his attitude. I think that he is underrated in general as a driver, but that he needs to be a bit more consistent. And the guy's got Fernando Alonso as his teammate, and he's won a race.
Yep.
So great stuff. Esteban Ocon for me.
It's a difficult one, and like I mentioned before, I've just come straight from the race, which was probably about an hour and 20 minutes ago, given how long we've been recording. I've got a couple of drivers in mind, but the one which really stands out for me is Bottas. No, I'm joking. It's just because he caused the issues. Like, that's why we had such a great race. I don't usually give driver of the day to the top drivers, and it has to be a pretty good weekend for me to do so. But I can't help but feel that Hamilton has had an incredible weekend. Like, he's come off the back foot of many races where he's not been the fastest car on the grid. He's not qualified first. He's always been second to Max. Despite the fact that Max was out of the race, given the damage on his car, Lewis was still at the back of the grid, still made an additional pit stop than everyone on the grid apart from one person, and finished 1.5 seconds behind the leader despite that. So my drive of the day is going to be Lewis Hamilton for a fantastic recovery drive, which he probably shouldn't have been in to begin with, but because he was in that situation, I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, he definitely had a really good race. 2.7 seconds behind the leader, but very, very impressive nonetheless.
Yeah.
And yeah, he obviously came out that first incident and was sort of untouched, but then suddenly found himself needing to be at the back of the grid because he hadn't changed his tyres. So yeah, it was very up and down. It's one of those circumstances where everyone seems to be struggling, and then there's Lewis Hamilton who's gaining 1.7 seconds a lap on the car in front of him, and you're like, this is normal. This is just what Hamilton does. Yep, he just flies through the field and is able to get past everyone. And yeah, it's very easy to just take that for granted now because that's just kind of what he does. He's got a brilliant car, and he knows exactly what to do with it. So yeah, I can totally understand why Hamilton has essentially come from the back to get on the podium, and with Vettel's disqualification is now P2. And I think that leads us quite nicely onto the championship standings.